Thomas Paine, Thomas Paine, Thomas Paine, Sam Adams, Sam Adams, Sam Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin. These men spoke up for what they thought was right. From their courage came such documents as the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. From their willingness to speak what was sometimes unpopular but right, we enjoy such liberties as freedom of speech, the right to keep and bear arms, and freedom of religion. There are those who still wish to oppress our freedoms, and there are still patriots willing to stand up and defend life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Men like Zeb Bell, who honor our founding fathers and what they stood for. It's now time for Zeb at the ranch, speaking up and defending your freedoms. Brought to you by Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers and all of the other great advertisers on the program. And now, Zeb Bell.
Of all the items that are in short supply today, the Democrats have put a lack of common sense and decency at the top of their list. Believe me, they are unbelievable. Here comes Kate Smith and God Bless America, followed by a Patriot with our Pledge of Allegiance. Give us a call quickly, please. Good morning. And a good morning to you. I'm Zeb Bell, Zeb at the Ranch, and of course brought to you by our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. All 7 locations with a big spring tire sale going on right now. And don't forget, too, our friends at Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. Right now, let's go to the phone line, have our Pledge of Allegiance. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very well done, sir. Appreciate it. And right now, let's go to the weather. I'm kind of curious as to what the next couple of days are going to bring us. And the weather brought to you by K&R Rental at 256 South, 600 West of Hayburn. They get there early in the morning, about 7 o'clock. Turn the key in the lock and say, come on in, world. And they've got the best of tools and equipment for rental at K&R Rental. Get ready for spring. All the spring work. They've got the rototillers, the power rakes. They've got everything you need for those projects outside. Absolutely the best in folks to work with. K&R Rental at 256 South, 600 West of Hayburn. And right now, here's Gina with the weather.
Beautiful for today, a wind advisory for tomorrow. Here's a look at your weather forecast. Today we are expecting sunny skies, high of about 70, a slight breeze out of the southeast at about 5 miles an hour. Tonight, mostly clear skies with a low of 40. Tomorrow, we are going to be in a wind advisory, gusts as high as 60 miles an hour. We are expecting areas of blowing gusts as well. Sunny skies with a high of about 58. Winds are going to be hopefully dying down just a little bit tomorrow night. After 10 o'clock, clear skies with a low of about 28. That's a look at your weather for Zeb at the Ranch.
Did she say 60 miles per hour tomorrow? There's going to be a lot of hats lost tomorrow. Holy smokes. Weather brought to you by K&R Rental. And don't forget they've got the best of tools and equipment for both long and short-term rental. You want to find out more, give them a call or stop in. Their number 678-3122. And they're right there on the Burley-Paul Highway. Really good folks to work with for all your tool and equipment needs. K&R Rental. Want to also give a great big shout out to some people that have really helped me over the years with keeping my clothes looking brand spanking new. Every time I got ready to get on an airplane or whatever, I could always depend on Daryl's Cleaners, 1223 Albion Avenue in Burley. They took my rumply crumplies and they made them look brand spanking new. They can do the same for you, and they have been doing the same for you. Kevin and Cindy and the rest of the outfit, they know that dry cleaning prolongs the life of your clothes, so why take a chance? Take them to the best. Daryl's Cleaners. winners, 1223 Albion Avenue in Burley. They're waiting right now to serve you. Want to give a great big shout out also, I'll be right with you, caller, to our friends at Ramsey Heating and Electric. Oh, yes, they're also getting up early in the morning to serve you at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. Goes without saying that any business that's been in business for over 7 decades, man, they must be doing things right, and they are. All your heating, cooling, and electrical needs, the best and most efficient people, professional people serving you. And again, at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley, the number to call, 678-0459, Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they provide warm winters and cool summers. Stop in or give them a call today. Caller, a good morning to you.
And a good morning to you too, Zeb. You know, you remember the expression, shooting yourself in the foot because you did something dumb, right?
Oh, boy, yeah.
Anyway, let's look at Delta Airlines. In the Atlanta area, they had 8,000 rooms reserved for this game. And guess what?
Yep.
They're going to cancel them now. And Delta Airlines probably had people coming on their airlines to the game.
Yeah, and there's some other stupid corporate people, including Coca-Cola, very dumb, and American Airlines joins into that list also of the so-called woke generation. I have no sympathy for them. I hope they lose so much money that they absolutely are running around like chickens with their head cut off. I absolutely think, and I hope and pray, and I mean this, Keith, that this Georgia election law will be a major downfall of the left and their stupid liberalism in trying to get all the laws changed away from voting security. I hope it is their downfall.
Wait, there's light at the end of the tunnel. By them kicking up such a fuss about it has made people aware of this law that they passed in Georgia about voting. And they'll go to their states and maybe insist on the same thing.
Yeah. I've got to call him. I've got to call the man, but Joe Larson, Cassia County Clerk, knows more about this than anybody I've talked to, and I'm going to try to get a hold of him. Joe, if you're listening, doggone it, give me a call. I'm going to try to get a hold of him and get him on the program and define our voting laws here in the state of Idaho as how they would stack up against or next to Georgia, Colorado, and some other states. So we're going to work on that, and hopefully, if not this week, next week on Monday.
You know, I personally know Joe Larson, and he is a straight shooter. And I've listened to him, and the advice he has given us is straight.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed having him on the air. Keith, again, every morning you set the pace, and thank you very much for all your help this morning. I appreciate it.
Well, it takes me a while to get worked up.
I know the feeling. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Caller, I'll be right with you in just a second. I want to remind everybody about Dino's Septic Service. Oh, they cover a lot of ground. Let me tell you, they're serving almost all of southern Idaho. All the way from Albion over to the Coldwater area, over to the Juniper area, Murtaugh, Twin Falls. Holy moly. They're there to serve you, and serve they do. Dino Septic Service, with the best in septic tank pumping and septic tank and drain field installed, backhoe services, of course, septic inspections, all of this and more from Dino Septic Service, with the most modern of equipment and very efficient people. Call them in Rupert 436-6526, Burley 678-1638, and Twin 735-8281. Remember the best, Dino's Septic Service. Absolutely the best. Oh, and by the way, Don't forget the great big Salmon Select Horse Sale. Now, all the activities are going on right now. The mule sale is going to be Friday night, horse sale on Saturday afternoon. But, I mean, they've got all kinds of fun things going on right now. I mean, today they've got I think it's the wolf howling contest today. Yes, it is. And still more of the Ty Evans Mule Clinic. And they've got something going on every single day, so don't miss a minute of it. Up there at the Lemhi County Fairgrounds in Salmon. 48th Annual Salmon Select Horse and Mule Sale. And, of course, it is Idaho's premier horse and mule sale. Fred Snook. Call him, 756-2125. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Zebediah. How you doing?
I am peachy. How are you?
Well, I'm peachy, too, kind of, sort of.
Okay.
Zeb, yesterday's Speaker of the House, Bedke, said that there was sure a lot of money coming into the state of Idaho. You don't suppose that the refugees or the illegal aliens might be headed for Idaho, do you? And then they're supplying money and doing things to buy Idaho off, so we'll accept them.
Well, Bob, you know me well enough to know that I don't speculate to the point where I know, but just a minute, hear me out. I'm not going to put anything past what the Biden administration is doing. And let's face it, we are on a fast track here in southern Idaho for distribution and ways and means of people to get all over the Northwest. We're in that kind of a funnel highway, if you will. I'm not going to dispute what you say, but the minute I find out more and I check it out that they are facts, you can believe that I'll go after it like a cat to a plate of milk on our program.
Okay, I agree with you, and it's okay. I know about your speculation thing, but that just hit me yesterday when he said that the feds were pouring a lot of money into the state of Idaho.
You know, Bob, I'll throw something back at you, and I want to get your opinion, and I'm going to ask others to call. I've been a resident of this state of Idaho since 1969, so I consider myself to be a fairly old timer. I am really concerned about a personality change in the state with a lot of people that are coming in from California and Western Washington, Western Oregon, and I'm really worried about the complexion and the change in personality and the voting of what's going to happen here in Idaho. What about you?
I completely agree with you. Everything's going to change because of the people that are coming in.
Yeah.
Us old-timers that are here, I've been here longer than you have, and I'll tell you, it's changing already. A lot of things are changing.
Absolutely. And I will say this, not for the better. I think you'll concur.
Yeah, there's no question about that, buddy.
All right.
Good days, Zebediah.
All right.
See you sometime down the road.
I hope so, Bob. Thank you very much for your call. I do appreciate it. Thank you. Want to remind everybody about our dear friends at Denny's Restaurant. Oh, my, have they got some great menu choices over there. They have kind of changed and added new things to the menu, like the chick and shroom melt. That's hard to say. Chick and shroom melt. One of their delicious melts. Absolutely great. And then they've got the, of course, signature Skookie for dessert. It's warm chocolate chip cookie filled with molten chocolate and topped with vanilla ice cream. Oh my, bring it on at Denny's Restaurant, America's Diner, 611 North Overland in Burley. You stop in, Thomas and Michelle ready to serve you today at Denny's Restaurant. Really, really nice people. Wow. Does that sound good or what? Oh, I see. Now, we, the people, here in the United States, are being threatened by anyone and various groups that if they don't get their way, they will hurt us, overthrow us, and burn us out. Such is the threat, and I'm going to call it the way I see it. Such is the threat of the filthy group called Black Lives Matter. I will not ever say anything respectful for a group of people that their mantra was walking across the bridge, pigs are like, cops are like bacon, or what was it? My mind all of a sudden changed. Fry them like bacon, cops are pigs, fry them like bacon. This group has caused more trouble, more animosity, and more devastation along with Antifa than any other group in the United States for a long period of time. They literally have the city of Minneapolis on high alert right now because Black Lives Matter, have said if Officer Chauvin is not convicted in the George Floyd case, Minneapolis will be burned down along with other cities. My question is, how can the jury, how can the judge, how can the lawyers, how can any part of this trial be fair for the accused, Officer Chauvin? And if it looks like this is looming on the horizon, people are worried, people are scared, people are going to try to protect themselves. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Yeah, when Scott was talking yesterday, I kind of wanted to call in, but I don't think you were taking calls. But what has happened to the term self-supporting? Like our interstate systems, our water systems within our cities. We've been drawn into this federal support everywhere you look. And I don't get it. I just wasn't raised that way, Deb.
Well, you and I are alike. The more that you extend the tin cup for the government to fill it, the more you become dependent on the federal government and the more control and power they have over you, and in this case, our state, any state. And personally, Earl, I'm so glad you brought this up because I am sick and tired and fed up with, especially now, this administration, the Biden administration, trying to overtake, control, and make demands so that they have complete control for almost every election in the future. I am really afraid of the federal government in this country right now being led by a demented man that's president and a power monger seeker, Kamala Harris, as vice president.
Well, when they tighten up the purse strings here, and actually they don't even have to do that, we're going to be dead in the water.
Oh, you got it. Oh, you've got it. When you make a loan from someone, you are indebted to pay that loan plus interest. Well, let me tell you something. The more we take from the federal government, that interest is really going to put the noose around our neck.
I mean, I'll admit to it. I hoard. I mean, if I see a stick laying in the road, and I can't use it for a fence post, it goes in the fire, Zeb.
Yeah.
I'm at a loss as to where we're going.
Well, the word thrifty is not in the verbiage of Washington, D.C. I'm going to be honest with you, Earl. Later on this morning at 10:30, be sure and be listening because one of my favorite guests is going to be on the show, Dr. Michael Busler. He's a well-known, well-read, well-written economist, and I'm going to talk to him about these absolute insane asking for and taking trillions of dollars, more taxes, higher taxes, spend. This is insane, and we're going to talk to him at 10:30. Be sure and be listening.
And then, I haven't given it much thought, but in the beginning of this Floyd deal, he was guilty at the time.
Yeah.
The courts are at fault for turning him out on the streets for probably decades past. A society can't put up with that. And if he gets off, whatever happens out there, we're doomed.
Yeah, you're 100% right. You know what should have happened? What should have happened, Earl, in hindsight, if the 2 or 3 policemen that were there, including Chauvin, weren't big enough, tough enough, or strong enough to handle Floyd, and he was on drugs, he's a big man anyway, about 6'4", 6'5", weighs about 250 pounds, they should have called for backup. They should have taken him down, and then literally in a horizontal position, put him in a police van and taken him into custody. But, you know, when you start leaning on somebody's neck and everything, and there was nobody, and some of the cops said, hey, we better back off a little bit, this thing got completely out of hand. But to say that George Floyd is a poster boy for decency, that's laughable, because he's been a wanted felon on many, many charges.
Well, I'm blaming the courts for what's going on and what's going to keep going on, Zeb. This has got to come to some sort of an end.
I agree. We are digging a hole that maybe we can never climb out of. Earl, I got to run. Thank you so much. God bless you. Appreciate it.
My best.
All right there. Thank you very much. Bennett Boys Auction Service going to have a big sale this coming Saturday. It's going to be the Herman Kruger Estate Auction, 11 o'clock Saturday morning, April 10th, located over in Jerome at 403 West, 50 South. And look for the road signs saying, here's the way to get to the sale. They're going to have some really good equipment over there. Pickup, a 2016 Dodge Ram 500 pickup, a travel trailer, Jeep, four-wheeler, furniture and household items, lots of tractors, loaders, farm machinery, shop equipment, all of this and more at the Herman Kruger Estate Auction in Jerome this coming Saturday, 403 West, 50 South of Jerome. Bennett Boys Auction Service, my buddy Joe Bennett. They're putting on the sale, and remember, no sale too big, no sale too small. The Bennett Boys, yep. They sell them all. Absolutely. Hey, by the way, don't forget, too, on Mondays, we, at 8:30 on the program, give away a dozen cookies to our dear friends at Sophie's Chatterbox, right there on the square in Rupert. Oh, what a restaurant. Oh, what a bakery. The best of everything right there for you. So you might be the lucky winner of those cookies. Don't forget, Mondays at 8:30, Sophie's Chatterbox, 530 East Street on the square in Rupert. All right, calls are welcome and very much appreciated. Give us a jingle. We'd love to hear from you. 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. How, honestly, how in the world can our legal system and the scales of justice be fair and equitable in a situation like what's going on now with the demands and threats of Black Lives Matter and Antifa, and the threat that if you don't give him a conviction to the full extent, we're going to burn down Minneapolis and other cities. Ooh. We've got problems in this country because the lawless have absolutely taken over control. And some people didn't like this the last time on the air I said this, but I will maintain and never back up that it's going to take some bloody noses to get law restored in this United States of America. You don't like it? That's tough. We've been mamby-pamby too long. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning. The hypocrisy and the duplicity is unbelievable. Apparently all of the Black Lives Matter, Antifa people get a pass on burning cities, killing cops, but they're prosecuting the people that just walked into the Capitol building. They're prosecuting these people, holding them illegally, and it's just unbelievable how they're using that incident, but they just turn a blind eye to all of the other violence, and now they're releasing criminals, and we got all kinds of problems coming across the board with known terrorists. And it's incredible, Zeb. I can't believe that people aren't up in arms more than they are about this situation.
Oh, stop a minute right there. That's a good point to pursue. What happened from generation to generation in this country to where law is not respected and our police are not respected and our property rights and buildings are not respected? I've never seen anything like this. Oh, sure, there were kooks and crackpots when I was a kid, when I was in high school and college. Yeah, absolutely. But they were put down. I mean, man, they knew what the law was, and the law was there. Matt Dillon and Chester were standing there to knot some heads. We've lost that.
Well, the prime function of government is protection of life and property. And it's obviously not happening in many of these areas, in many of these cities. And now we got who knows what coming across the border. They're busing these people all over the country. They got diseases, possible terrorists. It's just, I mean, the destruction, that potential for this country, even for our community. You know, we have a refugee center here. They could dump 100 of these contaminated kids, and I feel sorry for the kids. I mean, obviously they've been used as pawns by the Biden administration. And I guess the overall goal is to destroy this country internally or bring in their terrorists so that when they want to tear us down that way, it's just incredible. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of pushback.
I just really am appalled, and I'm really glad you brought up this angle of it as to why all of us aren't yelling and screaming and demanding that things get back to where they should be, a lawful society instead of a completely chaotic, lawless society. I totally agree with you, and it's a lackadaisical society that has been dumbed down and told, well, you can't do anything, you can't change anything. We've got to make some changes. The 80 million plus people that voted for Trump, I'm telling everybody right now within the sound of my voice, we've got to stand up and demand better.
Absolutely, and our politicians take an oath of office at all levels to uphold the U.S. Constitution and the Idaho Constitution as well. And in there it says, you know, their prime function is to protect us.
Absolutely.
Against enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, we got plenty of foreign enemies, and we've got plenty of domestic enemies too, and unfortunately they're disseminating this stuff right from the leadership at the toppest levels, and it's really sad. But we've got to demand changes or we will lose the country.
You've got it. Adrian, again, thank you for some excellent points this morning. I appreciate it. I've got another call waiting, and I appreciate your call. Thank you. Thank you.
We'll do what we can.
All right, sir. Thanks. Caller, stand by. I'll be right there with you. I promise. I want to remind everybody about Barry Equipment and Rental, Sales, Service, and Parts. Oh, yeah. They've got all the equipment, all the big dudes to get the lifting and the digging and the pushing and the carrying done. Absolutely. The Doosan wheel loaders and the excavators, and they got all the bobcats and the trenchers and the scissor lifts. I'm telling you, for the tough jobs, they've got all the equipment. Whether you want to lease, and they've got excellent rental rates, and if you want to buy, great financing programs. What are you waiting for? Barry Equipment and Rental, 159 West Highway 30 in Burley, 465 Addison Avenue West in Twin, and the Nampa location for Barry Equipment and Rental. Caller, good morning to you.
Good morning, Zeb.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. We're not going to solve these problems until we get the parents to start parenting.
I can't argue that. And Sean, I got a little bit of feedback here, if you would, please. I think that it's high time that this generation of parents and their kids better have a real sit down at the kitchen table and say, Johnny and Susie, we are not your best friends. We don't want to be your best friends. We are your parents. And when we say no, that's the way it's going to be, or you will suffer the consequences. We've lost that.
We've lost that, and we've lost consequences for bad actions. I was more scared of my dad than I ever was anybody in society.
Amen.
You know, I knew if I screwed up, he was going to be right there.
Well, you're 100% right, and I've said this on the program before. I think this is Chuck, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay. Chuck, I've said this before, and I'm going to stay with my opinion. I've been criticized by some of the Dr. Spockish types out in the audience. But remember the Saturday Evening Post magazine? I keep referring back to that. And every publication that they had something of Americana on their covers, whether it was the family of four walking to church, whether it was the family getting around the table and enjoying an evening meal, whether it was going to the park. It was family-oriented. We've lost that, and by God, we'd better get back to it.
Amen.
Thank you, Chuck. I appreciate your call always. And if you need anything promoted, let us know. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, sir. Calls welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. I got to tell you about what's going on up in Seattle. And when I heard this story, I was so mad. I just wanted to go up and start a bulldozer. I'll tell you why in just a moment. Don't forget Wick Steak Place and Burnout Saloon. Hello, Kim and the rest of the crew over at Wick Steak Place. I mean, wow. You walk in and the smells and the aromas are just driving you nuts, and you hurry to the table, grab the menu, and you say, I want this. I'm starving to death. Oh, my goodness. The food is delicious. Absolutely delicious at Wick Steak Place and Burnout Saloon. 18 East Main Street in Declo. You're not sure what it is? Just look for all the cars. I'm telling you, they're open Wednesday through Saturday from 4 to closing time. From steaks to prime rib, lobster, chicken to burgers, I'm telling you, it's all great. Believe me, Wick Steak Place and Burnout Saloon. We'll see you there in Declo. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
You know, you talk about people screaming and yelling and raising hell about what's going on, and I think they are. But you see, you'd hear nothing of it because, you know, what we need is, and I'm not saying that it's something that anybody can just do, but we need a state-by-state evaluation of what these people are accomplishing in these states, and you're not going to hear it from CNN, MSNBC, anybody, not even Fox News.
Now, wait a minute. Randy, wait a minute. Randy, wait a minute. Don't make an assumption about how I feel. And I'm going to correct you on something else. I am never going to condemn a network in its entirety without really listening and watching in its entirety. When I watch CNN, they are entirely a very left-wing organization. You can't say that about Fox News. I don't make any money from Fox News. They don't send me a paycheck. But I've got to tell you, you've got people like Brian Kilmeade and Tucker and others that are absolutely for America and its Constitution. So don't lump people in its entirety in a negative form.
Well, you're right. And have you seen Kayleigh McEnany, or what?
Yes.
You know, the old press secretary. Have you seen her show?
Yes.
Is it good?
Anything Kayleigh does is good because she's straightforward, direct, and very honest. As compared to Jen Psaki, the redhead that works for the Biden administration, that looks like she got her hand caught in the cookie jar and doesn't know how to close the lid.
Well, forgive me. I just, you know, you thought you had a real compadre, and then on you know, election night, I felt betrayed. And so maybe they're trying to straighten up, and forgive me for being on them. At least we have something. But I think that the people are upset and screaming across this nation. But it's hard to know state by state what's going on.
I agree.
It's even hard to get an evaluation here.
I totally agree.
We know kind of what's going on in Minneapolis, the Magic Valley.
Well, Randy, wait a minute. I think you'll agree with me, and you're bringing up an excellent point here this morning. When you go and read the Idaho Statesman or the Lewiston Tribune, or you listen to the bulk of newscasters, whether it's Boise, Idaho Falls, or even in Twin, they're all basically leaning to the left. If the wind quit blowing, they'd fall on their nose. And this is why I agree with you that it's very, very hard to get an unbiased newscast or newspaper story.
Oh, see, and that's the thing. I think there really is movement towards conservatism and saving America. I really gotta believe it. I gotta believe they don't feel any different than us. And so, you know, it's tough because, you know, you think you're just standing alone in the wilderness and nobody's hearing you. And maybe not. And so, you see, it's just like in Idaho. We need to get the Patriots together somewhere this spring or summer. I mean, there needs to be 10,000 people there if you could get them.
Yep.
That are all the same like-minded.
I agree.
And that would be a very healthy event for everybody.
Well, you said it on this program.
That the other one cares.
You said it on this program, and you were one of the first to say it, and I think it bears repeating, that for the 80 million plus people that voted for Donald Trump, they have been thrown in the trash can and discarded as not wanted or needed. We all need to stand up, like you have said many times on this program, and I commend you for it, and we've got to start showing our strength in numbers and demanding better for this United States. It's got to happen.
That's right. It's just like, you know, last Thursday I was going to go to the Lincoln Day banquet, and I was in Mountain Home. Well, guess what I left Mountain Home? 6. Well, I there's no way. And I was at a dairy. You know, I wasn't a stinky dairy, but I was still at a dairy. And that stuff still gets in your clothes. And I could have went straight to the Lincoln Day banquet, and I would have smelled a little ripe.
Yeah, but you would have been outstanding. You would have been outstanding.
In a field by myself. So, but the thing of it is I never got there because I wanted to confront them. And now they're all back there in that cesspool where they don't, reality doesn't seem to affect them.
I agree with you.
Reality is, Zeb.
I agree with you. I have no argument with what you're saying at all, and we've got to be more vocal, and we've got to take more action. Randy, I appreciate your call, as always. Thank you. Good argument. Thank you. I appreciate that. Caller, good morning. You're on the air quickly before the weather.
Good morning, Zeb. You know, when we were kids, you and I, when they said it's against the law, we shook in our boots.
Yep.
If we violated that, my goodness, we knew we were going to be punished one way or the other.
Absolutely.
But not now. These people burned down Portland, and the police do absolutely nothing because they can't. Their hands are tied. And then you got a prosecutor in California right now that's not prosecuting these people who do serious crimes.
Yeah.
And then you got Kamala Harris, who puts up bail for these doggone criminals.
You were talking about the prosecuting attorney down in L.A., that Gascon, and I would be the first to say that this afternoon at 1 o'clock, 10,000 people ought to storm his office and invite him to take a little raft trip out into the ocean. This man has done more to hurt the victims and the victims' families than any man involved in politics. I have no use for him.
What has happened to the word consequence?
Yeah.
What has happened to it? There is no consequence.
Well, what happened to the words honesty and integrity?
No, it's because of consequences.
That's right. Keith, I appreciate your call. I've got to get the weather.
You just can't win.
That's exactly.
I don't know what we're going to do.
I appreciate your comments this morning because I'm like you and Chuck that called in a little bit ago too. We've got to get back to the basics, and I know that may sound corny to some people, but I couldn't care less. We got to get back to the point where if Johnny messes up, Dad's going to put him over his knee and warm up those Wrangler bottoms. I don't care if people are offended by that. I don't care if somebody says, oh, that's child abuse. It's about time we started earning and getting and promoting respect in our society. It's just gone too far, Keith. It's gone too far.
But, you know, what's wrong with the police using these fire hoses on people? Nothing. It'll knock you over. That's got that much pressure.
Well, and that's what needs to go on in Seattle. That's what needs to go on in Seattle right now. And I'm going to quickly tell you the story. It'll knock your socks off. It's so ridiculous that Seattle parents right now this morning are so afraid for their school children going to school, this elementary school, there's 2 of them, and K through 8 grades, and the kids have to walk through a homeless gathering, a mini homeless city that's right on the school grounds, and they've got to walk across the needles and the syringes and the human filth in order to get into school. There's where your water cannons come in. There's where the bulldozers come in. It's time to move these people out of Dodge City and say, don't come back.
Well, I think that the police need to use more force than to just show up with their nightsticks, and they don't dare pull their gun because then they'll be in trouble.
Yeah.
But they need to use more tear gas and other things that can make you sick and everything else. They don't have any fear of our police departments.
I totally agree. Totally agree. We've got to install some respect of authority in this country, and not to have authority abuse that power, but we, the people, the United States, we absolutely, as citizens and taxpayers, we deserve a lot more than the garbage that we're getting right now. Keith, I'm late. I got to run. Thanks. Don't forget the weather forecast is brought to you this hour by our friends at Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. Absolutely the best in helping you with your hearing health. Don't forget to give them a call, make an appointment, 312-0957. And they're right behind the Minidoka County Hospital across from the emergency room, and they are there to serve your hearing health needs. Please make the appointment today, 312-0957. Right now, here's Gina with the forecast.
Beautiful for today, a wind advisory for tomorrow. Here's a look at your weather forecast. Today we are expecting sunny skies, high of about 70, a slight breeze out of the southeast at about 5 miles an hour. Tonight, mostly clear skies with a low of 40. Tomorrow, we are going to be in a wind advisory, gusts as high as 60 miles an hour. We are expecting areas of blowing gusts as well. Sunny skies with a high of about 58. Winds are going to be hopefully dying down just a little bit tomorrow night. After 10 o'clock, clear skies with a low of about 28. That's a look at your weather for Zebra Duran.
Thank you, Gina. I appreciate it. She does a wonderful job with our weather forecast, and it's brought to you by Mount Harrison Audiology, and they're committed to providing expert diagnostic testing with the best technology to provide the best in hearing health for you. Call them today. Please, 312-0957. Make an appointment today. Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. Calls are welcome. 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Can you imagine you're the parent of a kindergartner all the way up to 8th grade, and your kids, the only way they can get through to school is to walk through these homeless encampments with the filth, the human degradation, and the needles and the syringes? That's the truth. I saw it on TV this morning. Early at 4 o'clock, they were doing a report on this. Parents are outraged. Outraged, and they should be. And they should be forming citizens groups right now and just, I don't care if they have to hire or lease a bunch of bulldozers. Get them out of there. This homeless situation has absolutely been used as a crutch. Now, some of you might say, oh, these poor people, why, they've had the world smack them in the face. Oh, they're on drugs and they don't know any better. Oh, Oh, they lost their job. I'm sick of this mamby-pamby attitude. Get tough, pull yourself up by your boot tops, and try to make your life better. But to put your tents and your drug paraphernalia on the lawns and sidewalks of schools, of our children trying to get into schools, get the bulldozers. Get the bulldozers. My sympathy is gone. Calls are welcome. I know. Go ahead. The left is screaming at me. I can hear them from hither and yon. By the way, one other thing I've got to say is, and you probably are tired of hearing me use the words dumb or stupid or whatever. Well, it's a fact when it comes to the Democratic Party. Atlanta had been chosen, as you know, to host the Major League All-Star Game. Now, you know that. And you also know that because of Joe Biden and his lack of having any kind of common sense or reasoning because of his dementia, has criticized the Georgia election law and has run it in the ground. But here's where the Democrats are so stupid. They moved the All-Star Game to Colorado, where, and if you'll take the time to read the law, you'll find out I'm right, where the voting laws in Colorado are much tougher and more stringent. And there are almost 3/4 more white people in Colorado than in Atlanta. And the black businesses that were connected to the Atlanta Stadium and all for the All-Star Game are going to be losing over $100 million. Motels, restaurants, rental cars, the list goes on and on. That's all money lost now to Atlanta because of a stupid Democratic Party led by Joe Biden, who, by the way, yesterday called on Georgia to smarten up and stopping with the election law. They want to have it changed. There's nothing wrong with that election law. And that's why I'm going to have Joe Larson come on my program and talk about it. The incompetency, the idiocy, and the low-life attitude that's being portrayed by the Biden administration, Kamala Harris, and others absolutely shows that they are not very smart people. Calls welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Oh, I got a little bit of good news, though. Yeah, I do. Remember in San Francisco where the school boards were just hell-bent on changing the names of the schools as part of the woke culture? Oh, George Washington Elementary. Why, we've got to change that name. Abraham Lincoln High School. Got to change that name. It even went so far where a couple of the schools were named after Dianne Feinstein, and they said they had to change those too. The woke generation was absolutely telling everybody, you've got to get rid of those names. Well, all of a sudden in the last couple of weeks, I'll be darned. The school boards are re-examining, those are the words they used, re-examining the decision to change the names of these various schools. And I think they're finally figuring out by the time they change the names and all the costs associated with doing that, they're saying to themselves, whoa, that's going to kind of put a big dent in our checkbook. And so the woke wussies might not be respected much longer. Wouldn't that be a treat? Our major sponsor, we thank them, and that's, of course, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations. You know, if you're out on the farm in the dairy and you've got all of a sudden a couple of tractors with bad tires and a loader that's down and everything, holy smokes, just call your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. They've got great on-the-farm service for you. Their service trucks, zip, 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 and they're going to be there to help you, absolutely. And by the way, too, they're having a big spring tire sale that's going on right now, and all the tread designs, all the sizes, all the tires for your vehicles. You get a hold of them, stop in and see them today. Along with that, you know the best in brake service and front end alignments and shots and Shocks and struts. Changed it. And the batteries, they've got the best for you. 7 great locations. James and Buell, Dan on Pole Line in Twin Falls, Lane in Rupert, Mike and Jerome, Dave on Blue Lakes and Twin, the Twist family in Paul, and my buddy Trent on Overland in Burley. Nobody better. Your Magic Valley, Les Schwab Tire Centers. Coming up next hour, we've got Dave Bigo from Indianapolis, Indiana. And then a gentleman I have not had on before, Jim Hollingsworth, talking about the idiocy of climate change. We'll have more right after the news. Don't go away. Oh, here we go. Hour number 2, Zev at the Ranch on this Wednesday already, April 7th. Holy smokes, it's going fast. Hey, we're brought to you by our major sponsor, your Magic Valley, Les Schwab Tire Centers. All 7 locations serving you with a big spring tire sale going on right now. Stop in and see them today. And our friends at Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. Right now, this good word from Western Waste.
From the canyons of the Snake River and all across southern Idaho, we're all at your disposal. Western Waste Services, we care about our community, our resources, and this free land. Western Waste Services is lending a hand, always at your disposal.
Oh, I know a lot of you, like I am. I've started a little bit of spring cleaning, emptied out this, threw away that. Boy, if you need a dumpster, last year I had a dumpster. Remember that? I had a dumpster brought in, we filled it up, and then we had to get another one and fill it up. They've got dumpsters in various sizes at Western Waste Services. All you need to do is call, tell them what you need, and they'll drop it off. You fill it up, they'll come and get it. Western Waste Services, always at your disposal. 734-6969. This afternoon, I'm going to be over at our friends at Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation. Nick Greenwell and his excellent staff of physical therapists trying to help old Humpty Dumpty get back together again. And Deanne, of course, with her exercising. By golly, they do a fantastic job. At 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley. Please call them, make an appointment, and help your life get better. Absolutely, they can help you get back to being you. 678-1191. That number again, 678-1191. The very best serving you. Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley. Good people. And also some more good people, and that's, of course, our friend Joel Heward, his family and staff over at Hanson Mortuary at 710 6th Street in Rupert. You know, Memorial Day is right around the corner at the end of May, and if you have not yet got your memorials for your loved ones, they can help you at Hanson Mortuary at 710 6th Street in Rupert. Here's the number to call. Find out more information. They'd be more than happy to serve you. 436-5636. That number again, 436-5636. Hanson Mortuary, always providing the families they serve with the best possible support and comfort. And please remember the name and number. Hanson Mortuary, 436-5636. And Joel Heward, also serving you and your family at Morrison Payne Funeral Home on East Main in Burley. Well, my old buddy, emphasis on the old, was on a vacation with his family, and I think that's really nice. Over in the state of Colorado, he is back in Indianapolis right now, and we say good morning to Dave Bigo. Good morning.
Good morning, Zeb. Hope you and Dave are doing well.
We are. Dave, before we get into some of the heavier stuff, and Sean, there's a little feedback here, did you have a chance to go to your hometown of the Final Four?
You mean Where I live, here in Indianapolis?
Yeah, I mean, did you take in any of the basketball games?
No, I did not go down because we were gone for a week, and it was too much of a struggle for us when we got back.
I see. Well, talking about struggles, I mean, since you and I have talked the last time, can you possibly believe and help enlighten me? And I'm going to use this word. It sounds blunt and it's callous, but I'm going to say it anyway. How dumb the Democratic Party is getting and perpetrating on the American public. What are your thoughts?
No, you're exactly right. And Biden is, he's just a face mask for what's going on behind the scenes. He's being controlled by the far left activists and the unions and that, and and even the things he's doing, with his infrastructure bill. What people don't know about that, because the media will not talk about it, is that $400 billion is going to expand Medicaid payments for home health care and other things, but that is just padding for money they're giving to the SEIU, Service Employees International Union, the one that we fought. And so they can go out and they can force unionize more people across this country, which in the end, that ends up for more votes for the Democratic Party.
Well, wait a minute. Explain that a little bit more to me. I know that this bill is absolutely loaded with pork and unnecessary spending. I think only 5% of that bill actually goes towards infrastructure. The rest of the 95% is going to go towards social engineering programs, which you're talking about. How is the money going to be in a funding type situation to the SEIU? That to me sounds totally illegal. How are they going to do that?
Because he wants to spend that to expend Medicaid and community-based stuff and that. And the fine print of this proposal says his home care plan would create good middle-class jobs with a free, fair chance to join a union. And when they say a free, fair chance, what that means is they're going to be forced unionized. And this is where the SEIU comes in. The union has been able to exploit Medicaid home care programs to expand its membership with help from state Democrat lawmakers.
Dave, are you, as a businessman and a good businessman that understands the bottom line, are you really concerned about this trillion upon trillion upon trillion dollar spending that the Democrats are throwing at the American public?
Absolutely, because, again, Zev, and I've said this many times on your show, they want to bring down this country and turn it into a socialist, communist country without God in it, and that's what this is all directed at, and the American people need to wake up and stand up and stop this.
What were your thoughts? I know that you and I both really enjoy athletics and being both where we've played athletics. What were your thoughts when you saw the idiocy of the Democrats and especially Biden pulling and coercing the All-Star game out of Atlanta, Georgia, costing that city at least $100 million in revenue, and moving it to Colorado, and their voting election laws are even tougher with more stringent requirements than Georgia? I mean, what's going on here?
Well, it's, again, behind the scenes, it's the unions, because, the baseball players are in a union, and they're controlling this and doing this from behind the scenes, and, even though they're moving it to Colorado, Denver is a very unionized city, and I think that's part of it.
You and I talked, I remember vividly the program. It was before Christmas. And we were talking about LeBron James and the NBA and absolutely how disgusting the NBA was, pandering and cozying up to China and basically thumbing their nose at the United States. It almost looks like Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, is doing exactly the same thing with the major leagues, cozying up to China. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, I believe it, and the unions that are behind the scene, the big ones that are controlled, they're communists, and people go online and read my blogs. I wrote one after my second book came out called "Communism at the Highest Level," And that was from an article that a lady in California sent me. And she was an immigrant from Egypt, and she'd been in this country now. Oh, geez, I don't know. Back at that time, it was like 25 years when she sent it to me. And she says, Dave, I love this country, and the Unions brought down Egypt, and I don't want them to bring down America. And look at this article. And the article was, the SEIU are communists. They march in the streets of California every year with the Communist Party, and they had pictures of the SEIU marching down the streets with their SEIU signs next to the communists with their communist signs.
Wow. You know, isn't it about high time, excuse me, that we as the American public start demanding, and I'm not sure how to do this. Maybe you've got some light you can shed on it, but how can we, the American public, start telling athletes and different organizations like the NBA and MLB, Major League Baseball, etc., hey, just shut up, leave politics off the field or off the court and play the game?
Well, that's the thing, is getting in front of them and that, and, you know, but the American people need to stand up, and they need to get the media to stand up, too, instead of being controlled by the unions, and stop this stuff, and so that we can turn that around and we can stop them from bringing down this country.
Dave, you're not that far away, really, being in the central portion of the United States. You're not that far away from Minneapolis, and I told my audience earlier this morning, this is a very serious situation in Minneapolis now that Black Lives Matter, the sinister, evil Black Lives Matter group, has literally told the city of Minneapolis, you either convict Officer Chauvin or we're going to burn this city down. Whoa, what is your response as a businessman if you were in Minneapolis right now?
I would really go after them and the city officials, you know, and tell them you need to stand up and stop this stuff. And we can't allow this stuff to happen to our city and our businesses and, you know, our people, our employees, you know, that are depending on their jobs and all that kind of stuff. We got to take care of the people, not of a group that's not doing the right thing.
But, you know, let me ask you this. You're a very decent human being, and your thoughts and your issues that you discuss, you care about people, I can tell. How in the world, Dave, can Officer Chauvin, the man that's allegedly going to be convicted possibly of having the knee on the neck of George Floyd, when you have the Black Lives Matter and Antifa making threats of burning the city down, and you've got a jury and judge and lawyers and everybody connected with that court case absolutely trembling in fear, how can that man ever get a fair trial?
Well, it's going to be tough for him the way it's going, because I don't think the politicians there in the city will stand up and do the right things. I think they'll back down. And because, you know, it's a democratic city, and they're, you know, unfortunately, the unions and the people, other people like Antifa and that are behind, and Black Lives Matter that are behind these things, they're all part of a combined group that want to bring this country down.
How, and that's, I guess, the biggest three-letter word right now, how can we, the American public, start to write the course of where our country's going, excuse me, when you are catering to Black Lives Matter, a Marxist organization that should have no respect, Antifa, that absolutely is a group of violent people that want to do more harm to this United States and our Constitution. How do we turn this thing around, Dave, without having major violence all across the United States?
Well, Zeb, it comes back to the political part of this thing, and we've got to get people on both sides, in both parties, the Democratic and Republican Party, to stand up and go after their politicians and get them to stand up and stop this stuff. And we need some backbone in this country, and we need it now. And the people on both sides of the aisle need to get this done, because we can't allow, you know, radical groups behind the scenes to do this to our country. And, you know, here's the sad thing too. There is, some large companies, like what Coke and Delta Airlines are doing, and Soros, because he's the one that was behind the start of Black Lives or Antifa and Black Lives Matter, I believe, and they're pouring money into this, and because these are people, in high levels of business that they want to control the country too, and what you got to do is look at these companies and say, if they're going to be this way, we're not going to do business with them anymore or buy their products and stuff like that. So, again, we got to get our conservative Republicans and Democrats on the other side of the aisle to stand up and have some backbone to stop this stuff. And we as Americans got to, get the details on this and realize that we have to stand up and let people know. And these people that are doing some of this stuff, we don't buy their products or we don't cater to them.
Does it amaze you that Black Lives Matter, they actually have been held in the highest esteem for, even though they used violence, some of the articles that I read last week, they are being praised for bringing the black issues to the forefront. So it's okay to say that cops should fry like bacon and people should be beat up and property should be burned and looted, but it's okay if you bring what you think are good issues in front of the American public. Does it amaze you that the general American public today has accepted Black Lives Matter?
Well, it's the media again, and you got to realize that the media is controlled by the unions, and they're only allowed to print and talk about stuff that they support. And if it's stuff that's supported on the other side of the aisle, they're not going to let it be brought up and talked about.
I want to change gears in the time remaining and talk about the border. I think every state, I'm going to say this and you can correct me, I think every state right now is going to be held hostage to the illegal alien migrants coming into this country for the spread of COVID, the spread of the danger of whether they're gang members or whether they're terrorists. I think the Biden administration is literally pointing a gun at you and I, the American taxpayers, and befriending and protecting illegal aliens. What are your thoughts?
Well, they are, because, Zeb, I wrote a blog about this back during the Obama years, and they had the borders opened up in that, and the unions wanted it opened up because they want to bring these people across and get them jobs and then unionize them. And they also want to get them to the polls and vote for the Democratic Party. And I had one gal in Nevada that called me and says, the SEIU picked us up and took us to the polls in these buses, and they told us who we had to vote for, and the people running the polls were SEIU members. And, so it's all about control.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What about the border itself? If we don't get that closed soon, I have talked to some of my friends that ranch on the border in Arizona and Texas, and they're at the end of their rope, Dave. They're so scared as to protecting their family and their holdings. They've had their fences cut, livestock turned loose. They've had people threatened. They can't go out of their home without having a gun to protect themselves, and nobody in the government seems to care about these people, our citizens.
I know, and that's really sad. And we need to protect our borders and close them down so we'd have people, because there's already been a couple of people come across from over in the Middle East that are terrorists.
Yes.
That have been caught, and that's just a couple. There's probably a lot more that have come across.
Yeah, but isn't it ridiculous that, I'm glad you brought that up, the White House has scrubbed that information about those two Yemeni terrorists off of their internet page for the White House, and it's kind of like, out of sight, out of mind, don't worry about it. There seems to be a cover-up from the Biden administration to the American public, and I'm sure if they caught these two, there are many, many more they haven't caught.
Well, I agree with you, and that's why they're covering it up. And again, Biden is just a face mask. He's being controlled by Harris and Obama and other people. I mean, I don't know if you've seen this week, but two things that are interesting, that the United States is now looking at going back and doing the Iran deal again that Obama did. So they give millions of dollars and opportunities, for increasing their nuclear weapons and all that kind of stuff. And then another article, I don't know if you saw this, Putin just signed a new law allowing him 2 more terms as a Russian leader. So he'll be head of Russia till, I think it's 2036.
Isn't it great that other countries have such fair elections?
Yeah, we don't want to follow them.
Amen. Hey, we have a caller with a comment quickly, and I'm down to the last 3 minutes. Go ahead, caller, please.
I can just imagine behind the scenes, Obama, Harris, I don't know. But they've got to be just, it's got to be a scramble back there deciding how far they go and what they do, how far they think they can get away with. I believe that the states are going to, I think they're gathering themselves as we speak to retaliate and take control. True conservatives, true patriots. Have you noticed that, Dave? And what about in your state of Indiana? Are the people of the state fed up and going to try to take control of their country, at least through the states? I'll hang up.
That's a good question, Dave. What about the personality and complexion of your state?
Well, I think Indiana still is a conservative state, and it's moving in that direction even more so. And I think there's people around that are standing up and talking to the politicians to for Indiana to get with other states like us and move this country in the right direction.
Amen. I hope so. Dave Bego, it's a real treat to talk to you again. I'm so glad you had a good vacation, and we'll look forward to having you on next week. Thank you. Great political analyst and author. Pardon me, Dave?
I said thank you, and great to be on again.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, my dear friend. Take care. Dave Bego back in Indianapolis, Indiana. Thank you very much. I want to remind you about Denny's Restaurant. Oh, my goodness sakes, at 611 North Overland in Burley. Like I said last week, we had our return to somewhat normalcy, getting our Zeb's Lunch Bunch back over at Denny's. We had a wonderful time. Thomas and Michelle just went overboard to help us have fun with the prizes and everything. And I urge you to stop in because our next lunch bunch is going to be on May 6th, and we're going to be celebrating Mother's Day. Stop in to Denny's Restaurant anytime, all the time, any day for all the great menu choices, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and desserts. Oh, my goodness, you check it out today. It is America's Diner. Great food, nice people at Denny's Restaurant, 611 North Overland in Burley. You better believe it. Want to also give a great big shout out to a staff of people that are really, really conscientious about serving you, and that's Cameron and Siemens Insurance for the best of life insurance, health insurance, retirement planning, employee benefits, all of this with Todd and the folks over at Cameron and Siemens Insurance, Highway 24 in Rupert. What do you do? Well, you pick up the phone and you dial the number and say, can I make an appointment to visit with you? Absolutely. The number to call, 436-4424. That number again, 436-4424. They are very dedicated and accessible and devoted to serving you at Cameron and Siemens Insurance, Highway 24 in Rupert. By the by, before we get our next guest on the phone, I want to talk a little bit about Curtis and Lorena over at Patterson's Electronics. It goes without saying, and all my friends know this is true, when it comes to electronics, if I really don't know anything more than just plug it in and hope it works. That's about it. But they know everything about home theater systems, all your electronic needs, your surveillance cameras, car stereos, speakers, complete sound systems, all the TVs. They got a great selection from Samsung, Sony, Toshiba, LG TVs. I'm telling you, it would be worth your time and effort to please remember they're open Monday through Saturday 9 to 6, and they can serve you with all your electronic needs. Curtis and Lorena can explain everything. Really nice people. Patterson's Electronics, 421 East Main in Burley. You stop in and see these nice people today. Right now, let's go to the phone line. And we have with us a gentleman that I don't believe has ever been on my program before, but I'm certainly looking forward to visiting with him. Jim Hollingsworth. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Sean. Hey, where are you?
Well, first of all, my name is Zeb. Sean's my engineer. I'm down in southern Idaho, down by the Twin Falls and Burley area.
Oh, great. Well, I'm glad to be with you.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you on the phone with us, Jim. And, Sean, there is a bunch of feedback on this line. I don't know if you can curtail that just a little bit, please. Jim, your thoughts on global warming, climate change, and what the Biden administration is doing now for renewable energy and throwing away the world's most efficient and proficient energy program for windmills and solar panels. What are your thoughts on Biden and what they're doing?
Well, you know, to really understand what's going on, you'd have to read a lot on the subject, although my book, Climate Change, A Convenient Truth, it's written for kids and it's easy to understand, but, you know, to cover all the things you're talking about would take a week. Listen, the big thing with Biden is that they don't seem to have anybody on their science committee who truly is willing to consider this science, because what they're proposing, just take one example, if they eliminate fossil fuels, the Department of Energy has listed 6,000 things that are made from oil and coal. It's just amazing how illiterate these people are. And right now, wind and solar is providing about 2% of our energy. So if you consider, if you're going to get the rest of the 98%, how much land would be covered with wind and solar, you get some idea of the problem.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, Jim, and I'm sure that you have the knowledge and expertise to explain it. When I heard Biden say that he was going to have charging stations all up and down every interstate, and they were going to increase by millions of the cancer sticks, the wind program, the turbine program across the United States, and increase by millions all the solar panels, where is all this land going to come from?
You know, they don't tell you where you're going to get the energy. Right now, if you set up those charging stations, they're going to be fired by coal and natural gas and nuclear power plants and some hydro. But when you get right down to it, if you get everything running on electrical, just think of the average house that's run today with natural gas. You put all those houses on electrical, you're going to need a lot more power, and they're not even making plans in that direction.
Well, they are saying, Jim, in 14 years, by 2035, they want to have everything geared away from fossil fuels. They want to stop all the fuel vehicles, the pickups, the transportation trucks, etc. How in the world is this feasible? I mean, you're talking about major trucking companies. We're talking about agriculture having to convert all their tractors and their combines, everything over to battery operated, which is absolutely ridiculous. How can they come up with such a dumb and very uninformed idea to portray to the American public?
Well, just think about this. Think of a solar-powered airplane as an example. You know, you can build one, but you'd never haul any people on it. So many of the things that they're proposing absolutely are anti-science. They have never considered all the ins and outs of producing electricity by that. I mean, to produce that much electricity where they're you would have to go outside, and when you open your eyes, you see nothing but solar panels and wind machines. It's a horrible thing. It's a trade-off. You know, the first thing is nobody has ever proven that carbon dioxide is causing the temperature to rise. That's been a strong theory for a long time, but they've never proven it. And rarely do you see anything about the fact that carbon dioxide is the source of all plant and animal life. I mean, carbon dioxide is a very necessary gas, and there's just very little of it, like 0.041%, hardly any of it. And yet, think about that, provides all the trees and the plants and the animals, and it's a wonderful gas, and why we've demonized it is beyond me.
Jim, I sit here every day on this program, and I worry about the American public. Have we absolutely lost our minds? Have we lost our ability to question? Have we lost our ability to reason? Have we lost the ability to raise our hand and say, wait a minute, that's not true. I don't believe you're telling us the facts about global warming or climate change. Nobody seems to be doing anything.
Well, you know, if people really want to know the truth, there's a lot of false information on the internet, but there's a lot of truth there. And I'm involved with probably a couple hundred scientists who, in fact, 31,000 scientists have signed a petition that says that carbon dioxide is not the cause of global warming. And people, the problem that I'm faced with is that most people that are spouting all this are unwilling to discuss it. And I've had people I've known over the years, we've been on panel discussions and stuff, and I've said, hey, think about this. And one guy told me, he said, don't send me any more material. I'm too busy trying to save the world. And that was his exact statement. So, you know, if you can't talk to anybody, if they won't consider any of your information, they're going to be totally lost, and our country's going to be lost because, you know, take what happened in Texas here a couple of months ago. They were totally unprepared for that.
You know, Jim, you're a smart man, and you've studied this, you've researched this, and you've written a book about it. But can you please, in very simple terminology, explain to me and my audience, really, have you as a scientist noticed at all any climate change? Gee, we went through the winter. It was cold. We had snow. Gee, we're seeing now spring where it's starting to warm up, and of course your winds and your temperature fluctuations, etc., seems normal to me. And then we're on our way to summer. Where is this absolutely existential threat of absolute doom with climate change?
Well, first off, I'm not a scientist. And the reason I wrote my book was to try and reach people that are just everyday off the street type people, and I wanted them to see that this is not something that's hard to understand. It's easy to understand, and so that's why I wrote the book Climate Change, A Convenient Truth. It's kind of a takeoff on what Al Gore wrote. But listen, you know, there's so much going on that doesn't make any sense to anyone. And when people wake up, some of the great scientists that were on the government committees have finally taken time to research it for themselves and have left and become what we call deniers. But, you know, there's an awful lot of information out there. I just ran onto one this morning that I thought was really interesting. I got this video from Clear Energy Alliance. It's called Clear Energy Alliance. If you just look up that title, you'll find they got about 50 little short cartoon-type videos that explain just all kinds of things about global warming, and it's something that anyone can understand. I mean, there's no problem with understanding what's going on. You know, the thing that did it for me, and that's been about 15 years ago, was if the temperature in Idaho goes from, let's say, 100 degrees in the summer down to 35 below in the winter, a half a degree change in temperature is not going to affect anything.
That's right. That's right. And I would say this, and I want you to dispute me if you don't agree with me. I would say the warmer climes are the healthier climes. And for these people, like going all the way back to Al Gore and many others that say we've got to cool the planet down, that's going to create more of a health hazard, less agricultural food production, and put the whole world into a turmoil.
Well, hopefully their grandiose plans are beyond their ability, hopefully. We've had volcanoes that have erupted that have blanketed the whole Earth and caused the temperature to drop. But, they have not considered what they're actually trying to do. They really don't understand what they're doing. That's where the problem is.
When you say they don't know what they're doing, let's pursue that a little bit more. We, down here in the southern part of the state, are heavily involved in potatoes, sugar beets, beans, corn, alfalfa hay. And I'll be honest with you, Jim, I haven't seen too many John Deeres running down the field with a propeller hooked onto them.
Well, let's face it. We can build electric cars, and they're just fine machines. About half the weight of the car is the battery. But they'd be great for running from your home to the office in town and stuff like that. But you start moving across the country, you're not going to make it. And then you try to electrify these trucks that bring all our groceries and all our other supplies. That's just totally unrealistic. And supposing you say, okay, we'll just build batteries for the time when the sun doesn't shine. I don't know about where you are, but where we are, we sometimes have 2 weeks in a row where the sun doesn't shine. You can't build that big of a battery, and then a lot of the material for those batteries comes from places like China and other places that are not real friendly. And, we're going to run out of that stuff and not be able to build all those great batteries.
Let me give you a scenario I'd like you to respond to. It's great for these people to say, well, we're going to go all electric. But what about the replacement, Jim? What about a truck that's headed down the interstate, loaded with dairy products for a supermarket, and the battery goes out of that truck? How are they going to all of a sudden drop one in by helicopter? Are they going to be easily accessible to whether it's a truck, a car, whatever? And what about the disposal of these batteries?
They don't have any answer for that. There's no answer. There isn't. It's unrealistic. It can never happen. And, we're still going to end up with diesel-powered trucks, hopefully, and gasoline-powered cars. And you think right now, just take right now as an example, when the wind doesn't blow, and there's times when it doesn't blow, or it blows too hard, and the sun doesn't shine, then it's backed up with natural gas or coal-fired power plants. And, it's just like what happened in Texas. They were not prepared. And, another thing about these wind machines is they have to be lubricated, and if it gets too cold, then they got to have heaters. And there's some places where it costs more to heat them than the electricity they're producing. So it's a total loss.
I'm sitting here absorbing everything you're saying, and I absolutely agree and concur with what you're saying. And to think that in 14 years, the Democrats and the left want us to go absolutely all electric, I can't imagine how the electrical grid is going to have to be transformed. I can't imagine how these vehicles and everything else are going to be plugging into the electrical grid, and we're not going to have total chaos.
Well, just think about it. You'd have to build new power lines and so forth. I mean, you drive around through California, and every factory's got solar panels on top of it. But when you think about, the only place that solar panels make any sense, we were in Mexico for 4 years, and we lived way up in the mountains, and the closest power line was about 30 miles away. We had solar panels, and we used them to charge a battery, and we used that for our lights, and we had a gas stove and gas water heater. But, that's the only place that solar makes any sense is when you're totally isolated from the grid.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about your book, Climate Change, A Convenient Truth. You say it's geared primarily for children. Is that correct?
Well, I wrote it on a 6th grade level so people could understand it. But, you know, I was reading all this junk that was put out by the administration, and I kept saying, you know, that's not true, that's not true, that's not true. And I thought, you know, what I need to do is just sit down and write a book. And the chapters are quite short. They cover basic, you know, everything that's really important. Doesn't cover everything, but it covers just about everything. And it's in a form that anyone can understand. And, you know, this book ought to be in the hands of every child and every family that has kids, because if our country keeps going the direction we're going, you know, in 15 years, we won't have a country.
Absolutely. We have a caller with a question for you, Jim. Stand by. Caller, good morning. You're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Well, if you're a socialist who really wants to be a communist, you have to break America. And one of the ways you break America is to just, any way, shape, or form, whether or not it's illegal coming across the border or you destroy fossil fuel structure. And right now, China has everything to gain. And these people that claim to not know any better, I believe they know damn good and well what they're doing. And it's intentional. And China has everything to gain from all this. And you say to yourself that there's however many scientists say that this is wrong. It's damn, we've got to hear from you. We got to hear from all of you, because we cannot do this to our country.
Respond to the caller, please, Jim.
Be blocked from your message. You sound like a patriot. You know, it's well, you have to realize there's a plan for all this. It's not that they don't really know what they're doing. They know what they're doing, and their whole program is designed to destroy America. And, of course, it's tied in with China and Russia and some other places. So, you know, there are still some good people in this world that are working for the truth, but there are not a lot of them.
Well, what's the best source, Jim, for people to try to obtain a copy of your book? I mean, is it through Amazon, or what would you suggest?
Well, you know, it's listed on Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble and a couple other places. But you could just search for the book online. Excuse me. You can search for the book online or just go to Amazon. It comes right up. It's one of the first things. If you're looking for anything on climate, it'll come right up. But, you know, we need to get this book in the hands of every single kid that's in school.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I just had a note from a lady down in Arizona. She's in the Arizona legislature, and she's the chairman of a certain science committee. And she wanted to order like 10 or 20 books, whatever she could get for the price. And, you know, that's what we need, is people that'll take a stand, that'll buy books and put them in the libraries and just make them available. You know, I had a young man I met, excuse me, a couple of years ago, who was a science teacher in a high school. We became friends, and then I tried to get him to read my book, and then pretty soon the dialogue just ended. He wouldn't talk to me.
Oh, my. Well, you know, sometimes when you tell the truth, it hurts and people can't stand to listen. Jim Hollingsworth, I want to tell you how much I appreciate your coming on the program this morning, and I'm going to try to get a hold of a copy of your book and have you back in the future. But I want to say thank you. His book is called Climate Change, A Convenient Truth. Thank you, Jim Hollingsworth. God's blessings to you. Thank you very much.
Hey, listen, you know, if anybody just, you know, they still don't want to make the investment, if they'll send a note to my email address at jimhollingsworth@frontier.com, I'll send them some basic information about the book, and they won't have to read it. But, hey, I really appreciate being on your program, and I wish you the best.
Thank you, sir. The same right back at you. Thank you very much. Great gentleman. I've enjoyed having him on the program, Jim Hollingsworth, and his book is called Climate Change, A Convenient Truth. And I think, like he said, everybody should get a copy of that, read it, and understand really what's going on. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate your being on the show. And right now it's time for the weather. And I think today's not too bad, but tomorrow might blow everybody right into the ocean. The weather this hour brought to you by Phillips Oaks, Goodwin, Crane and Company, and they are the professionals when it comes to accounting services for the Minneapolis area and beyond. For well over 50 years, please note that they have the best in tax return preparation for you, your family, and your business, tax planning, business consulting, retirement planning. Oh, the list goes on and on. They are the professionals serving you. Offices in Burley and Rupert, Phillips Oaks, Goodwin, Crane and Company. And right now, here's Gina with the weather.
Beautiful for today, a wind advisory for tomorrow. Here's a look at your weather forecast. Today we are expecting sunny skies, high of about 70, a slight breeze out of the southeast at about 5 miles an hour. Tonight, mostly clear skies with a low of 40. Tomorrow, we are going to be in a wind advisory, gusts as high as 60 miles an hour. We are expecting areas of blowing dust as well. Sunny skies with a high of about 58. Winds are going to be hopefully dying down just a little bit tomorrow night. After 10 o'clock, clear skies with a low of about 28. That's a look at your weather for Zebba Duran.
Gina, thank you very much. And brought to you by Phillips Oaks, Goodwin, Crane and Company, the professionals in accounting services for you. Remember, they have two offices, 1710 Overland Avenue in Burley. Number to call, 878-7000, and 625th Street in Rupert, 436-5607. They can help you, and they will. Phillips Oaks, Goodwin, Crane and Company. I've got a few moments here where I'd love to have a couple of extra calls, so give us a jingle on the landline at 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Give me a call, and we'll visit about any topic that you want to discuss. So give us a jingle on the phone line right now, please. One of the things that I think absolutely needs to be said about this Georgia election law that was passed, it has been lied about. Absolutely lied about by our President of the United States, Joe Biden. He has denigrated and absolutely shortchanged the people of Georgia, and he called on Georgia to smarten up and get rid of the election law. I have read the law in its entirety, and it's only common sense and very security-oriented for the safety and sanctity of our voting. And for this man, President Biden, to say, smarten up, Georgia, and get rid of this law, and then make threats that one was carried out. Major League Baseball jumped in and canceled the All-Star game in Georgia, and that town of Atlanta is going to lose over $100 million, and possibly even point the finger at the Masters golf tournament and say, well, maybe you should pull out of Georgia too. This is insanity. And everything on that law makes common sense, and especially the part where if you don't have an ID, get one. It's not that hard. What is so hard about getting an ID today? Somebody call me and tell me this. You need identification and an ID for almost anything else in life, any other purchase. Anytime you want to go somewhere, get on an airplane, whatever the case might be, buy a bottle of booze. You've got to have an ID. And for these people to say that, oh, it's just too hard. Why, it's just too hard. Why, we just don't have the time. We just don't have the wherewithal to get an ID. That is absolutely barnyard material. You know what I'm referring to. I absolutely think no ID, no vote. It's that simple. Your vote is worthless if you can't prove who you are. And for this so-called President, Biden, to denigrate the state of Georgia, and I've got a lot of friends that live down there in Georgia, and say smarten up, I think that's absolutely ridiculous. Your thoughts, give me a call, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. I want to give a shout-out this morning to a lady that has been on our program many, many times. She lives back in Pennsylvania. Her name is Kathy Barnett. Remember her? She is a very, very congenial black lady that is running for the U.S. Senate. And she was on television this morning. Woo, let me tell you, she is fired up and ready to go. She is calling out Joe Biden. She's calling out Kamala Harris. She's calling out the Democratic Party. And she absolutely is poking her finger in their face, saying, you better straighten up your act because you are crippling America. And she, if she's elected, would be the first GOP black female senator ever. And so I'm very proud to say that she's been on my program many times talking about politics. Kathy Barnett from Pennsylvania, and we want to wish her absolutely the best of luck. By the way, I want to tell you about a big sale that's coming up this weekend. It's going to be on Saturday, managed by the Bennett Boys Auction Service. It's the Herman Kruger Estate Auction. It's going to be at 11 o'clock on Saturday, April 10th, located over in Jerome at 403 West 50 South. Look for the signs, and lunch will be provided by the Cook Shack. They're going to have pickups and travel trailers and Jeeps and four-wheelers and tractors, all kinds of shop equipment. They've got saddles. They've got yard and garden items. All of this and more at the Herman Kruger Estate Auction coming up this Saturday at 11 o'clock sale time, and that's going to be in Jerome at 403 West 50 South, managed by the Bennett Boys Auction Service. No sale too big, no sale too small. The Bennett Boys, they sell them all. Absolutely. Caller, real quick. I've got exactly 30 seconds. Fast.
Okay, Jim Crow, who in my information does not exist, why do we keep referring to him?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll tell you all about that tomorrow on the program, and the Jim Crow laws and the referral by the Democrats, especially Biden, to Jim Crow. I'll have that for you on tomorrow morning's program. I don't have time to get into it now. You waited a little bit too late in the hour, but I'll have that tomorrow morning on the program. Keith, I appreciate your call.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, my friend. You take care of yourself, and we're going to send it back over to Sean. And then next hour, we're coming up with Pastor Alex Lissau in our segment called Why Not God? And then at 10:32, Dr. Michael Busler, noted economist from New Jersey. Don't go away. The music fades out and I fade in. Good morning, hour number 3, Zeb at the Ranch on a Wednesday, April 7th. Brought to you by your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. All 7 locations serving a big spring tire sale for you. Stop in and see them today. Along with our friends at Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. Want to remind you, too, about our friends over at Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More at 459 Overland in Burley. Oh, boy, they have some great, great specials. Save you money on flooring. You better get in there and check it out today with Jeff and the very knowledgeable staff. Don't forget, too, when it comes to your comfort, they've got a brand new shipment of sofas that have just come in, and you can go in and buy anything off the floor. I mean, my goodness, they'll deliver it that same day. These folks are ready to serve you. Jeff and the staff at Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More at 459 Overland in Burley. You stop in, see them Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, Saturdays 10 to 4, Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More. Right now, it's time for one of my favorite segments, and evidently one of the favorite segments of our audience. We get a lot of calls regarding this. Why not God? And our guest is Pastor Alex Lissau with the Zion Lutheran Church in Burley. Good morning, sir. Good morning. Oh, I got to turn your mic on. That's one of the prerequisites.
Yeah, that's good.
There you go.
I'm sure that there's people in my congregation that love to turn that mic off once in a while, too. But thank goodness, and I appreciate that. And welcome and good morning to everybody else, too.
You know, Alex, one of the things that has drawn me to you over the years is that you say what you mean and you mean what you say. And today, that is a trait that is pretty popular with me. me. We are seeing, I think, a lot of wussies in our society that won't stand up for anything, and they'll turn and run at the drop of a hat. There was a pastor up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, last Sunday on Easter Sunday that did not turn and run, nor did his congregation, and they were a little bit over the numbers that were imposed by secularists in the government in the church service, and lo and behold, 5 or 6 police officers came through the door and demanded that the service be curtailed. That led to the pastor getting in their face, and believe me, he told them in no uncertain terms they were to get out of his church and not come back. And I think it's high time that Christianity started standing up and being firm.
I agree with you 100%, Zeb, and God bless that pastor in Calgary, Canada, because that's exactly what we need to do in this particular time in our society. I think we are faced with all kinds of considerations about the fears of COVID and even other things. And we get this hate speech kind of a concept because we preach the gospel, which describes sin and what sinners are and the problems with that kind of a situation. We try to teach directly from Scripture, which is what God has given us to teach and to help train up our people and train up our children and those kinds of things. And I think that's part of the problem in our society is we haven't trained up our children well enough, especially with respect toward the great God that we have. And so what we do is we have a society that's moved directly into a situation where they're kind of looking toward science or philosophy or some other form of consideration and putting down the whole concept of God. When we went through this earlier stages this last year with the numbers and being shut down, we were shut down just right at the beginning of the Lenten season last year. I think we had Ash Wednesday service, and then we had nothing all through Easter, and we were gone for like 6 weeks before we were able to start back up again. Fortunately, our governor here in the state of Idaho was gracious enough to finally say, hey, listen, the church is essential. Hopefully there were some people pulling on his strings and forcing him to stand up and look at this situation. But that's the situation with this guy in Calgary, too. You stand up and say, hey, the church is essential. My people are here. My job, my responsibility, God-given, God-called to stand up for righteousness and truth, and nobody's going to shut us up. And I'm with the guy. If that came into my place, that'd be the same thing. Fortunately, I have a congregation that I think would stand up with me and stand shoulder to shoulder with me and say, get out of here. So,
let me ask you this, and you've kind of opened the door for me to walk through here, but the so-called woke generation or the cancel culture, it's not going to be a matter of a long time before they're going to make a major assault on the Bible. That's my personal belief. What are yours?
I agree. And in fact, it's interesting that you say this because it popped into my mind just as I was thinking about today, a couple of days ago, and I thought to myself, what is woke? What is this? There's nothing woke when you're in a reality coma. Okay, there's nothing woke about the kinds of things that woke means we need to destroy those things which are historically strong and built us up and as a free nation. Woke means that we're going to take away all moral concepts of our society. We're going to force people to accept that which they do not wish to accept. Where does this come from? And I think, and we've talked about this before, I think what we've done is we spent a whole lot of time dictating and teaching and influencing our children and as we grow and the media and all the other things that we have surrounding us kind of pushes us away from those things which we consider righteous and true and proper and living a moral lifestyle, taking care of our families, taking care of our children. I don't want society to teach my kids. I want to teach my kids. I don't want schools telling my kids what's moral, what's not moral, what to accept and what not to accept. And even goes back even when my own children were in school, in high school. I remember my daughter coming home and telling me all this stuff that she'd been told by one of the teachers in her class, and it infuriated me, and she begged me not to go to the school and talk to the teacher, and then fortunately I did get a chance to talk to the teacher because he was also an assistant coach on my son's football team, and I met him on the sidelines, and I said, what the heck's going on in your class? I said, my daughter comes home with this attitude about things that I would not accept in my home.
Yeah.
And didn't teach her.
Yeah.
And, you not have to understand, and, this wishy-washiness. And I think that's part of what we see in the woke thing. I mean, they're going to force their social ideas on us despite the truth.
But we keep referring to, and I do on this program too, they. Who are they? Where did they get their power?
That's another thing I've been thinking about as well, Zeb. And this rolls back and probably even before the Bill and Hillary Clinton time frame. But I think it was about that time that it really struck me when I kept hearing, especially Hillary talking about progressive. Yeah. We're progressives, What is progressive? To me, I was 50 years old before I went to seminary, so I was a progressive-minded person. I wanted to achieve things in my life. Not only that, but the companies I worked for. I had a responsibility. I had a functional responsibility. I had a responsibility for people, and I had a responsibility for the bottom line. How does it turn out at the end of the day? And my job was to do the best job I can. I wanted to progress and do things right to make things better all the time. This whole concept of progressivism is completely different. I was even looking at a definition of it, and it says it's a political philosophy in support of social reforms.
Yeah.
A political philosophy on social reforms? That's not progressive. The stuff that we're talking about today in our society is not progressive. I mean, you can go back and study Babylon.
That's right.
You can go back thousands of years to see the garbage that was going on in that particular time, and the moral destruction of society, and how God tried to handle and straighten things out and bring people in, the prophets and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden we're pushing again in that direction. There's nothing progressive about going backwards.
That's
nothing.
Right. That's right.
I mean, you're driving down the road and you see a sign, and you're so busy driving and talking, and all of a sudden you go past that sign. All of a sudden you come to the realization, and I'm not talking about GPS here, but you come to the realization that was your turnoff.
Right.
And you're out in the middle of nowhere, and you say to yourself, well, that's okay. I'll keep going this way until the time comes when I can make a turn to go that direction. And you keep going, just because you made a mistake doesn't mean you keep following the wrong path.
That's right.
You need to turn around, go back, take the right turn, and then you'll get to your destination, because otherwise you may never get to your destination.
Amen.
And at the end of it all, you might wind up losing everything you expected to gain in the direction you were moving.
And that's exactly what's happening in this country.
Exactly.
It was founded upon Judeo-Christian principles back in the 1700s, and now we're trashing everything that was blood, sweat, and tears and lives that were given for this country.
Exactly. I mean, if you add all together my active and reserve time at duty, I got 12 years of military background. I was in that Vietnam conflict time frame. I saw the body bags. I saw the people that came back, from the guys that were flying A-1E, low ground support, all throughout the Ho Chi Minh trails, and dropping short bombs and fighting the battles and coming back, and watching these guys, watching wonderful young men who were pilots. In actually, kind of the A-1E was just an old prop engine type plane, with their lives in their hands every day, and they were coming back, and you'd see them coming out of the officers' club and those kinds of things. They'd been drinking. They'd been trying to find a way to bring peace back to their mind in all these troubles. And I think about all these things, and I say to myself, we need to stand up for what is right. I mean, even today, in this situation you're talking about, the pastor in Calgary, even today we need to stand up. I mean, Scripture tells us in 2 Timothy that we're not created with a spirit of fear, but with power and love and self-control. God's given us the ability to do that, to step forward. Be bold. Stand up. Speak out.
But what has happened to society, though, Alex? I mean, when you and I were kids, it was a much tougher society. When a wrong was committed, it was stopped and it was made right. Today, wrongs are multiplied. I don't understand what happened to society that we can't stop this insanity.
You know, Zeb, I don't know how other people live their lives in situations, and you know as well. My mom died when I was a year and a half old, and my dad was my only source of parenthood until he died when I was 12. But I remember vividly those experiences when I would come home and my dad would tell me about something or have me do something, or if I didn't do something, or if I told a fib or a lie to try to get out of something I did and I shouldn't have done, I got punished.
Oh, yeah.
And I got punished in a way that was not beating, it was not abuse, it was a teaching process. And I remember some of those punishments were very painful in the fact, and it didn't take but one good strap across the butt.
Yep.
And when that finished, I was trying to suck up all the oxygen in the room to relax. A few minutes afterwards, and I would come out of the room, and my dad would put me down next to him and put his arms around me. He'd hug me, he'd tell me how much he loved me, and then he would give me an example of reasons why I needed to live a life that was promise, commitment, responsibility. Who do I stand for? I remember going to a gathering of Christians at one time where the speaker stood up and said he was talking about his son who had kind of departed from the right direction and was moving in the wrong direction. And he finally said, he called him in and he sat down with him. He says, "My son," he says, "this isn't the way I raised you. This isn't what I taught you. And either change your ways or change your name."
But the snobbery and the absolute "I'm better than you, I'm holier than you are," the elitism that's being portrayed by this woke generation, and we're sitting back like sponges just accepting it. I don't understand this.
I don't either. I don't understand it myself. I think it comes from years and years of leniency, of all kinds of unusual kinds of teachings, and the things that aren't focused on the way we're raised and taught properly. I mean, Proverbs tells us to train up a child in the way it should go, and when he gets old, he won't depart from it. Well, obviously, we're not training up our children in the way they should go. And this whole idea, this woke concept, this whole idea of progressivism, that we're going to change everything, we're going to change it socially by use of government. That's the thing that bugs me the most.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to change the society that I live in by using government to change it instead of using righteousness, proper moral teachings.
When you were a young man, as was I back in our teenage years going into college, etc., did you ever anticipate looking ahead, thinking about things in the future, that you would be told that certain cartoons would be off limits and that movies of great substance like Gone with the Wind would be gone, and that there might be an attack on the Bible to get rid of the Bible in this country? I never thought about those things when I was a young man, and now they're about ready to come to fruition.
I'm with you. I never thought about those things in those days either. In fact, and like I think I mentioned to you before, I went into the service, I was gone for 4 years, I go back to school, and I'm in college, and I'm saying to myself, what in the world's happened?
Yeah.
What has gone on here? What, in just the 4 years, it had been coming, but I wasn't concerned with those things. I didn't think about, I thought more about myself and my own wife and my own family and those kinds of things. But now, now I've got children, grandchildren. In fact, I even got a couple of great-grandchildren now. And I look at the world that they're going to have to grow up in, and I shudder with fear for all the things they're not going to have that I had.
Yeah. We have a call with a comment. Quickly, caller, please. You're on the air.
Yeah, excellent subject, excellent speaker. What's going on is we have a "don't judge me" society, including little kids.
Amen.
If a parent wants to reprimand them, they're being judged.
Absolutely.
And I remember I was a senior in high school in 1960, and I sassed my mother, and my dad happened to hear it, and he grabbed me by the shirt and backed me up against the wall, and he says, "I'm your father, and that's your mother, and I love you, but we're not your best friends. So you can talk to your school buddies that way, but not around here."
Amen.
I'm almost 80, and it's still stuck with me. Thank you.
God bless you,
God
caller.
bless you. You bet. My son, even when he was in high school, was probably 6'2" at that point and about 280 pounds. He was a gorilla on the football field, a great kid. He had his mother's personality, thank God. And it was interesting because there was at one point, I don't know whether it was too much practice or too much frustration at school or whatever it was, but he was standing in the kitchen and his mom said something to him and he talked back there, and I walked up to him and I had to look up at him because he is about 2 inches taller than me, and I said to him, "Don't you ever talk to your mom like that ever again. And he knew I love him because I have always loved my children. I'd put my life down for my children. But at the same time, my life in their life means that we need to teach them what is right. We can be friends. But first and foremost, I'm his dad.
That's
and my
right.
job is to teach him what is true and right and proper.
Right now, where we're at in the society, and we've alluded to it already, that the woke generation absolutely, because of the progressivism and the left attitude, the socialistic values, they want the Bible stricken from anybody reading it or studying it. How far away is that? Because I've talked to some people involved in ministry across the United States, and they're very worried that it's at the doorstep.
I don't know how close it is to the doorstep myself. I do know that it's close because every time I turn around, you read something or you see something or you hear something. And in fact, it's amazing to me that some of the people on the general news media have the gall to even suggest that they know anything about Scripture because they say stupidest things in the world, misusing God's Word completely or manipulating it to fit their own agenda and their own mindset. And I think it's really true because, the whole idea, what is hate speech? Well, the Bible's probably full of it, according to our woke society. What is the idea of? And we get it. This gets us into this gender dysphoria situation. This gets us into men wanting to be women, women wanting to be men. It gets us into all. And I'm sorry. If that's offensive to you, I'm sorry that you're offended by it, but I stand on it with both feet and both hands raised to God, saying, please, Lord, change this, because it is totally even if you're not a Christian, even if you're not a believer in an almighty God, science itself, biology itself is a contradiction to the stupidity of where we're going, some of this stuff.
But I guess the bottom line is, in the time remaining in this segment, how do we stop this bus from going over the cliff?
The people, those of us who have the pulpit, those of us, and I have a pulpit every Sunday and during the week.
And I have one during the weekdays.
And those of us that have a pulpit need to continue to stand up for righteousness. If the people are offended by what we say, it's not me offending them. It is the situation that they've gotten themselves into and the situation they've got all of us into.
Absolutely.
That's the offense.
Absolutely.
And the offense is that my wife showed me a picture the other day, and maybe you've seen this, but it's a picture of like 4 or 5 Labrador retrievers sitting on the ground next to you. A couple of them are black. One's dark brown, liver colored. One's a white, and one's a yellow lab. And they're all in color. They're all sitting up against each other. And the caption underneath it says, "These are all different colors, and these dogs are dogs. They're all dogs." But they're all different colors, and they all look different, but they all get along because they're all dogs. Well, we're the same way.
Yeah.
Blacks, whites, Asians, whatever it is, we're all people. We're all human beings. We all need to find a way to get together. I feel bad for those people that have a different view that is not appropriate in my view. But at the same time, I'm not going to go beat up on them or punish them. At the same time, give me the freedom to believe and stand up what I believe in.
Absolutely. But can that happen again in our society now that we've let all these values that used to be appreciated with the family and mom and dad going to church with Johnny and Susie, and that's wrong, this is right, black and white, it seems like we got away from that.
We have got away from it. And things, we've gotten away from the concept. I take you back to the 22nd chapter of Matthew. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself.
Yes.
God gives us everything we need to know what it means to truly work together and love each other and be one body of people together. And the calling to love our neighbor doesn't separate us from differences. We're even called to love our enemies. And that's really hard to do. I mean, on Sundays, when I do our prayers of the church in front of my entire congregation, I pray for our president. It's hard for me to do that because I think of, the foolishness and the craziness of what's being pushed out of there. But I do pray for him. I pray that God will change his heart and change his mind and maybe change everyone. sometimes I get really depressed about that, because in my own heart, in my own mind, I say to myself, can this ever change?
Yeah.
And there are those that preach that it will never change. I will never second guess our God. And I'll pray every single day that He will change it for us. Because I don't want, what have I got? I got 10 years at the most, maybe. I got one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel. Somewhere along the line, my kids and grandkids and great-grandchildren are going to have to live through this stuff.
Absolutely.
And I don't want that for them.
Time goes too fast. We're out of time. And I'll tell you what, Pastor Alex Lissau with the Zion Lutheran Church, your congregate members are fortunate to have you. I'll tell you that. Thank you.
I'm fortunate to have them. They're gracious, loving people, and they spur me on.
Well, I'll tell you what, you've spurred a lot of people on this morning. Excellent topic, and the way you handled it. Thank you for being here on the segment, Why Not God. Thank you.
God bless you all. Thank you.
Pastor Alex Lissau, and I thank him for taking the time to come up here every Wednesday at 10:06. I want to remind you real quick before we send it over to our main studio for a 3-minute break, Edith's Cafe. If you haven't eaten there, make plans to go. My goodness sakes, they're open Tuesday through Thursday, 11 to 8, Fridays and Saturdays, 11 to 9. Whatever's on the menu is delicious. Please take your family members in and enjoy really good eating. Oh, by the way, they do catering, and they can make sure they're all ready with call-in orders to help you, too. They're located right across from the golf course in Burley at 144 East Highway 81 in Burley, and the number to call, 878-2248. I'm telling you, first-hand information, they are good. You got to get over did you have the peach cobbler with the ice cream?
No, but I had their hamburgers. It was just a stopping in quick for lunch. It was great.
Oh, I tell you what, super good food and really nice people at Edith's Cafe. Right now, we're going to send it back over to our main studios. We'll be back in 3 minutes.
And now, back to Zeb at the Ranch on AM 1230 KBAR. To reach Zeb, call 436-2244 or toll free 1-866-927-4587. And now, here is Zeb.
Thank you very much. And don't forget, on Mondays, of course, our dear friend Vicky at Vicky's Country Garden over in Paul. My goodness sakes, how does your garden grow? She will tell you how to help it grow every week. Mondays at 10:45. Don't forget, right here on Zeb at the Ranch, Vicky's Country Garden. Thank you very much. Right now, let's go to the phone line. And a gentleman that I have, I say this every time, and it's so true. I really respect his attitude on economics, and he is a professor of economics and also a great political analyst. Good morning, Dr. Michael Busler. How are you?
I'm doing well, Zeb. Thanks for having me. As you know, it's always my pleasure to be here.
I'm going to start this way. As an economist and a man that I know, you've been on this program so many times, I understand where you're coming from. You must be absolutely white-knuckled right now, worrying about all these trillions and trillions of dollars that the Biden administration wants to spend.
Yeah, I'm white-knuckled about what they've already spent and what they're considering spending. So why do I say that? The federal government has gone on a spending spree since this virus has started and shut the economy down. After the first stimulus package, that was probably enough to get the economy going. They had another second stimulus at the end of December. That, in my view, was more than enough. This last stimulus package, which wasn't much stimulus to do with COVID and more to do with other things, and this proposed infrastructure plan really has me worried. Now, why do I say that? So last year, the federal government deficit was more than $3 trillion. That means they brought in about $3.5 trillion and spent over $6.5 trillion. So they had a $3 trillion deficit. They'll have another $3 trillion deficit this year. That will bring the total public debt, which is all the deficits we've run up to $30 trillion. Now, is that a problem? Well, most economists would say if the public debt, is less than 1 year's GDP, it's tolerable. Above 1 year, you start to worry about some problems. So this year's GDP will be about $21 trillion. The public debt is up to nearly $30 trillion, so we're almost 50% above 1 year's GDP. So what will the problems be? Well, two of them. One, the interest expense alone on that, and right now interest rates, as you know, are at rock bottom, but the interest charges are now approaching $400 billion a year. That's about 10% of what the government budget would be, excluding all this COVID spending. So it's $400 billion. It can't be spent on other more productive things. Secondly, which has me even more nervous, is the federal government, to finance that deficit, they sell bonds. And they sell bonds to the public, so the public buys those bonds. That means there's capital coming out of markets. So if the federal government is pulling all this capital out, when business goes to expand, we may run into a capital shortage. And if you run into a capital shortage and business can't expand, you're looking at some severe inflation problems. In other words, the federal government's spending will increase demand in the economy. There's a lot of money. People have a lot of money to spend, so demand is going to go up. The hope is that business can expand output to meet the demand and the economy grows. In order for business to expand output, there are basically two inputs into the economy, into the business, labor and capital. Now, there's plenty of labor around. We have high unemployment. But if there's a capital shortage and they can't raise capital to expand, the only way to respond to increases in demand, if you can't increase supply, is to raise prices. So what we could be looking at is prices going up, inflation. If business can't expand and they're stagnant, you run into a stagnant economy. That's called stagflation, stagnant economy with inflation. We haven't seen that in more than 40 years, and we were able to correct it. It was painful, but you can fix it. So my fear is we may have already overstimulated the economy, and inflation could be a severe problem, perhaps as early as the end of this year. President Biden's talking about more stimulus, which will make the problem even worse and create a greater inflationary problem.
But let me ask you this, and I'm not nearly as involved in the economy or economics as you are, but we've talked about this before. I always said that if you would have been my teacher in high school and in college with economics, I'd be a lot smarter person. But I would say this. For every penny that has been increased at the pump, that is causing more inflated prices on everything. And since January, we have seen on diesel alone go up well over $1 in increase. And all of that has got to have a real fear of escalating prices on any goods and services across the board. And they are anticipating more fuel increases to where diesel and gas could be up about $4 or $5 a gallon by summer. That's inflation that absolutely is running completely out of control.
You're absolutely right, Zeb. So the Biden administration has declared war on fossil fuels. They stopped drilling on federal lands. They canceled the permit for the Keystone Pipeline. They're looking at trying to get the Dakota pipeline permit canceled, too. So that's going to severely reduce the supply of oil and gasoline, and when you reduce the supply of anything, the price goes up. So the price we see going up now is because demand is picking up, the economy is picking up domestically and worldwide, but mostly because there are now restrictions on supply, and that will continue. I'm not sure how bad it'll get. $4 to $5 a gallon I don't think is out of the question. I really hope it doesn't get that bad, but it's certainly not out of the question. And you bring up an excellent point, Deb. When you raise energy prices, it ripples through the economy and causes inflation in a lot of areas. Not just we pay more for gasoline or energy to heat our homes, but now all the truckers that deliver all of the goods to stores every day, they're going to be paying more for their fuel and more for the transportation costs. That's got to put upward pressure on prices too. So when you take a look at it, there's really four reasons why we're going to have inflation, I think. Number one, as you just point out, is increasing energy prices, which is always inflationary. The Federal Reserve has allowed the money supply to explode. It's gone up more than 25% in the last 2 years under any economic theory except some of the new ones that President Biden seems to be following. but under the traditional economic theories, that too will be very inflationary. The huge deficit spending is inflationary, and the capital shortage is inflationary. So you have all those things pointing to inflation, and you're right, my knuckles are white worrying about, as early as the end of this year, we could start to see a rather severe inflation problem. And to fix it, it gets very ugly and very difficult.
And not only the inflation and the escalating prices, but then coming off of COVID with many, many businesses being forced to close or go on limited opening basis, now Biden comes out and says he's going to have a huge tax increase. I mean, that's like ducking a right cross and getting hit with a left hook.
That's exactly right. And to make it even worse, he says he's only going to raise taxes on the highest income earners. Well, there's no way he's going to be able to pay for anything near what he wants to do on just the high income earners. So he's going to start with that. He's going to raise wants to raise the corporate tax rate from 21 up to 28%. The top bracket for the highest income earners from 36, he wants to raise it up close to 40%. He's talking about capital gains being treated as ordinary income, which means instead of paying the current 20 or 23.8, depending on how much it is, capital gains tax rate, he wants to take that up to 40% too. Now, the problem with taxing the wealthy, which he says he wants to do and doesn't want to hurt the middle class, taxing the wealthy is where all the new capital comes from. So you raise the corporate tax rate, they have less retained earnings, that's less capital for them. You raise the capital gains tax rate, it creates less capital, and you raise the highest income tax rate on the the highest income earners, that too reduces capital formation. So a few minutes ago I said I'm worried about a capital shortage, and that will lead to possibly stagflation. He's going to make the capital shortage worse by reducing capital formation by raising taxes on the highest income earners.
Let me ask you this, Dr. Bussler. If this were, let's say, 8 months ago, and Donald Trump was in office as President of the United States, as compared to what we've seen in the first 3 months plus of Joe Biden, where would we be at with Trump perhaps as president still, or now the mess we're in with Biden? How would you compare the two?
Well, a couple things wouldn't have happened. The border would be secure, and just as it was when he left office, in 2020, the number of illegal immigrants was at record lows. Now, people say it was because of the virus, people weren't coming. I think it's just the opposite. If there's a virus in South America, more people would be coming. But President Trump was able to secure the border. He would have never passed this last $1.9 trillion stimulus package because he would have recognized it wasn't needed. He would have liked the package passed in December to be a little bit larger to help people that have been hurt, but he wouldn't have passed any additional package, and he wouldn't consider this infrastructure package at a time when the federal government has such deficits. I think the growth that we're about to see, and I think this year, assuming vaccines get out and the economy reopens, we're going to see rapid economic growth for the second half of this year. Probably, I could see the third quarter of this year growth being close to 10% and maybe in the 6 to 8% for the fourth quarter. So I think in the short term, things are going to look real good. Now, again, I'm worried about inflation starting up at the end of the year. But with President Trump, the deficit would have been smaller. The vaccines, the Trump vaccines, would still be out there. He would have hit the same deadlines as Biden is hitting. So I think the virus would be under control, but we wouldn't have to worry about this inflation problem. And Trump recognizes that you can't just pump up demand in the economy. Business has to have the ability to react to that by increasing supply. And I think this inflation problem that potentially will be there shortly, I don't think would be an issue if President Trump were still in office.
Let me ask you about the United States dollar. I mean, how stable right now is the dollar if we look at 4 years of this spend attitude with the Biden administration? What's going to happen to the devaluation of the American dollar?
Exactly what's going to happen. The dollar will be devalued.
That will cause a bunch of problems in many areas. It will also give China a chance to say our currency should be the one that's accepted worldwide and not the U.S. dollar, because look at all the problems the U.S. dollar is having. You just can't continue to print money that you doesn't have any backing, which is what we do. But you just can't continue to print large amounts of money and not expect an inflationary problem. So, yeah, as you continue to print the dollars, each one will be worth a little bit less, and that could cause a whole host of problems further down the road.
Dr. Bussler, in your lifetime as an economist, etc., have you ever seen a situation like we're in right now, where the Congress and the Oval Office, the Senate, all of them are controlled by the Democratic Party with a spend attitude? Have you ever seen anything so sinister that's going to get us into a hole we'll never be able to get out of?
I've never seen it this bad. You may recall after 2008, President Obama had a Democratic Congress that is a House and a Senate, and he was able to push through the Affordable Care Act, a big spending bill. So he was able to get a couple of things through before the next midterm election. But I've never seen anything like this where they're just gone wild. I mean, they're starting to, they just have no concept of trying to stay within their means. The federal government, the Congress, is just spending all kinds of money, and some of Biden's economists tell him that it's okay to increase the money supply as much as you have to fund some of these things. So some of the deficit spending is being sold by selling bonds to the public. Of the $30 trillion, about 24 roughly will be bonds sold to the public. The other $6 trillion are bonds that are bought by the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve, where do they get the money? They just print up extra money, which increases the money supply. So we've never seen a time where the Congress was, in my view, so irresponsible that they're spending trillions of dollars that we don't have, and they're willing to print up trillions of dollars to increase the money supply to help pay for this. All of this, I'm afraid, is going to come crashing down, and it may be sooner rather than later. So even after Obama's term, he was elected, he did have majority in both houses, but they were never as irresponsible as they are today.
We have a caller with a question and a comment. Caller, quickly, you're on the air. Thank you.
Well, I mean, if China needs to be, the reserve currency, or they want to be the reserve currency, and they are pulling the strings behind the scenes, I mean, we know that Biden is compromised, but China's got a lot of control over a lot of things in our government that we probably aren't even sure exactly how deep it goes. So, if they could become the world's reserve currency, that would be perfect for them. And then to bring our country down, I mean, it's like they are intentionally, our elected officials, the Democrats, are intentionally destroying our country. I'll hang up.
Respond, please, Dr. Bussler.
Well, it certainly looks that way. And as you know, President Trump was much tougher on China than I think President Biden will be. There are some reports about how he is compromised. His son has gotten into some situations. It's difficult to tell how much of this is true and how much we know and how much we don't know. But at this point, you're going to have to take a very tough stance with China. Look, they've been taking advantage of us for decades. The World Trade Organization deemed them, for whatever reason, as a developing country. So as a result, they got a lot of breaks that normally very developed countries wouldn't get. For instance, when they make a car in China and sell it in the U.S., we charge them a 2.5% tariff. When we make a car in the U.S. and sell it in China, they charge a 25% tariff. On Corvettes, for whatever reason, they charge a 50% tariff. Well, what that means is our products were so expensive, nobody was buying them in China, or very little. Their products were inexpensive, so we were buying a lot of theirs. That meant a lot of our money is flowing out of the country to China. Not much of their money is flowing into the U.S., so we had that huge negative balance of trade. President Trump got into office and said, listen, I want to fix this right now. China said, we're not in any hurry to fix anything. So Trump said, either you fix it or I'm going to slap tariffs on everything, virtually, which is what he did. He brought China to the table. They did come up with a trade agreement. Now, the virus came in, and I'm not sure what status that agreement is in. But Trump, nonetheless, took a very tough stance with China, and Biden is going to have to do the same thing, or we risk being run over by China and have them taking over some things economically. And they're also starting to get very feisty militarily. You know, they're taking stronger action in Hong Kong. They're talking about doing something with Taiwan, and they're spreading some of their military might around. I'm afraid if Biden doesn't stand up to that relatively soon, things are going to get very bad.
Well, and that leads me to my last thought I want you to talk about. I've only got about a minute and a half left, but if things don't change and this administration stays on the same track that they seem to be on right now, America, I think, can't survive economically. Am I wrong?
Well, I hope it doesn't get that bad, but certainly with everything that they're doing is counter to what made America great. And if they keep continuing to spend money we don't have, continuing to discourage people from working by overtaxing them, and encourage people not to work by giving them all kinds of free stuff, that too will tend to stagnate the economy, and we could end up with a country far different than what we're used to. Look, what made the country great, real quick, we went from the birth of a nation to the number one largest, most prosperous economy in the world in about 150 years. The reason was we encouraged individual freedom. As long as you didn't infringe upon anybody's rights, you can pretty much do what you wanted. Individual responsibility, as long as you were able, you took care of yourself. Low rates of taxation, so you got to keep most of what you earn, and a limited role for government. Individual freedom, individual responsibility, low rates of taxation, and a limited role for government made us great. Everything Biden is doing is exactly opposite to that. It's limiting freedom. It's putting in social responsibility instead of individual responsibility. It's raising rates of taxation, has a greater role for government. That's going to hurt the economy and the country going forward.
You are the best. Dr. Michael Busler from back in New Jersey, professor and also political analyst. Thank you. God bless you, and come back soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zeb. Look forward to doing it again.
Thank you, sir. Wow, you can learn so much by listening to him, and I really appreciate him taking the time to come on my show. I want to quickly go to the weather forecast, brought to you by Scarro's Meats. Don Scarrow and the crew at 331 North Road, Jerome. The number to call, 324-7657, or you can go to their website, scarrowsmeats.com, and check out all the delicious meats for you, your family, for every occasion. All the different sausages, the bratwurst, the different flavored bacons, all the tri-tips, the pork ribs, everything at Scarro's Meats in Jerome. Right now, here's Gina with the forecast.
Beautiful for today, a wind advisory for tomorrow. Here's a look at your weather forecast. Today we are expecting sunny skies, high of about 70, a slight breeze out of the southeast at about 5 miles an hour. Tonight, mostly clear skies with a low of 40. Tomorrow, we are going to be in a wind advisory, gusts as high as 60 miles an hour. We are expecting areas of blowing dust as well. Sunny skies with a high of about 58. Winds are going to be hopefully dying down just a little bit tomorrow night. After 10 o'clock, clear skies with a low of about 28. That's a look at your weather for Zeb at the ranch.
And that does not sound good. Windy conditions for tomorrow. Be careful out there. Hey, the weather brought to you by Scarro's Meats. Don and his excellent staff over there at 331 North Road, Jerome. Again, that telephone number for all the meat you need for any occasion, 324-7657. They are changing the way we eat, one delicious bite at a time. Quickly, I want to also tell you again a great big thank you and a shout out to my major sponsor, and that's, of course, the Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. And it goes without saying, right now, this time of the year, with the grass starting to grow, they'll be fixing a lot of lawnmower tires. And by the way, if you're on the farm or the dairy and you've got equipment broken down with bad tires, they'll be out there with their service trucks. They are here to serve you at all 7 locations. And they're having a big spring tire sale right now. All the tread designs, all the sizes for all vehicles on sale. Check it out today at any one of the 7 locations, along with the best in brake service, front end alignment, shocks and struts, and batteries. They're there to serve you, and they do it well. Your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, James and Buell, Dan on Pole Line in Twin Falls, Lane in Rupert, Mike in Jerome, Dave on Blue Lakes and Twin, the Twist family in Paul, and my buddy Trent on Overland in Burley. Your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. Absolutely the best. Our Bible verse for today from Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verse 20. And there is not a single man on all the earth who is always good and never sins. Think about it. Right now, we're going to end the program by saying the way things were or the way things ought to be. God bless you and your family. The 4 words that mean the most to me: in God we trust. We'll be back here tomorrow morning at 8:06. Sean, thank you much. We'll see you tomorrow.